Hail, hail, the Celtics are here, and we're back for another Flagship podcast this week. I'm joined, as ever, at the moment with Josh. Josh, good to see you, mate. Thanks for coming back on.
Great to be back in the pod. There's been a lot of stuff since we've been last on, so good discussions today, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure, man. And we've got a new hand on the pirate ship, on the Flagship with us this week. We've got Sean, Twitter handle on screen. Sean, good to see you, mate. Thanks for coming on with us.
Thanks very much for having me. I'm really excited to be here, especially with the ongoings it's been for the past week. There's a lot to talk about, so thank you very much for having me at this particular time.
I'm looking forward to it. We're just getting through like the lay of the land of what's been going on over the last week, and there's been a lot of different bits to go on. But when you came on, the first thing that struck me is I've got one hat, I've got one basketball hat, and I left it in the house, and I thought I should have brought mine in. Should have brought mine into the studio today, and we've got a wee bit of basketball hats on the go. But yeah, man, there's been plenty going on this week, and I think we were all tipped into this week with the whole Jota to Saudi Arabia thing, and then that kind of consumed all of us, I think, for like a day or two, from the creepy video to the announcement. How much is the club getting? How much will the club spend off the back of it? And that really did kick off the start of the week. But one thing that I personally felt I was kind of overlooking with all of this, and I definitely am speaking for myself here. I'd love to hear what you guys think, but I didn't really take much of a time to really think, like Jota was a good guy, like he did good for us, and kind of have that wee, nostalgic kind of look back on him and think, like every player we've sold, it's been decent. You think, oh, he was great for us, and he scored this goal and he did that. Jota scored some screamers, man. Like he scored some absolute belters. He really gave us some proper magic. I know the celebrations are really iconic, but some of the goals are like stellar, So I don't think myself, I gave him probably enough of a tip of the cap and a nod to the actual contribution he gave us while he was here, because although inconsistent at times, he was top shelf.
Yeah, I'll come in with that one. I think when you're talking about the iconic moments, particularly with the celebrations and stuff, but you need to remember the iconic goals as well, particularly against Rangers, the first touch and the chipping, and that's what led to the celebration, the goal at the cup final at Hampden as well. It's always these sorts of moments, although it was a short time, like we do need to, as you say, tip the hat to him. He came in, it was only 2 years, but he gave us some magical moments within those 2 years, and I think we've been fairly compensated for those moments, and as you say, it was a strange move, the video. I mean, I watched that at 10:30 that night and I couldn't settle for the rest of it. I don't know how I got a peaceful sleep that night, but yeah, it's those, it added a strange twist to the transfer as well. But on reflection, I think it was a good piece of business for the club.
Yeah, I would probably echo a lot of those thoughts. I think Jota, for Celtic, he was an excellent player. Obviously, he was only with us for 2 years, a limited period of time, but the impact he had was immense. He scored in derbies, scored in semi-finals, scored big, massive goals for us. I think he was a fan favourite as well. There's not a player I can think of who the supporters really taken to. So many iconic moments, even when he jumped into the crowd at home to Dundee United last season. I remember that was amazing. You get the knack for doing it in the Champions League as well. Scored a couple of goals there away at Leipzig, notably, last season. Excuse me, in the defeat. So it would be interesting to see if he could mirror that form going into Europe next season. Obviously, that's not going to be the case, but you can't begrudge Jota for going over to Saudi Arabia, like £192,000 a week. I don't think anyone's going to turn down that amount of money. You'd be silly if you'd done so. So hats off to Jota for getting his move. Obviously, like we've said, the announcement video was a bit weird. I seen Hibs kind of came out and made a parody of it the other day, which was quite funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was. But nah, it's disappointing to see him go, obviously, and hopefully we can find a valid replacement for him. But nah, Jota was an immense player. I got a painting of him for my Christmas just there, but I don't know what I'm going to do with that. No, I might keep it. I might not. I'll see what happens. But nah, disappointing to see him go. But at the end of the day, fair enough to him. Big move, big money, sets his family up for life.
Yeah, for sure, man. And it's one of these ones as well, because I don't think we really expected Jota to leave this summer. So it's one of those ones where it kind of came out of left field. The fee, and again, normally some of these transfers we've been disappointed with them. It's we sold them for that much. Like, come on, guys! Like, you should have held out for some more money or something. But you know, it is just from top to bottom, from start to finish, it's been a wee bit unusual, you know. It's been like, yeah, we've got a big bag of money, and like, sure, that was quite easy. It wasn't a big saga, you know. We've still got plenty of time to go ahead. The rest of the team is pretty strong all the same. And you know, I wonder now, because normally we know this, the habit from Celtic has been sell one guy for in excess of 10 million and then call it a day, spend some profit, and then go again. So, you know, is that going to be this? Is this going to be the only departure we see? The only significant departure we're going to see this window? Are we on kind of higher alert? Are we kind of worried a wee bit more about maybe somebody like an Hatate? Definitely not Kyogo. We'll come to that later. But Hatate, I'm not even sure. Maybe O'Reilly maybe comes into that before the comments we had from him yesterday, which were good fun. But yeah, does this signal we're maybe going to lose one or two, or does this signal we're probably going to keep a few? I wonder.
Personally, for me, I think hopefully it means we're only letting go of one in Jota, but we do have a couple of members of our team who are like outstanding, the likes of Rio Hatate and the numbers Leila Bada put up last season despite his minutes. He's going to be on the radar of some big clubs, and if Celtic do get the money they've been offered for Jota in a similar bracket to that, I could see one or two leaving. I don't think Brendan Rodgers would want three big first team players like Jota and Abada and Hatate to depart in his first summer in charge. I think he'd want to limit it to potentially one or two. I think Jota, the trio of Jota, Kyogo and Carter Vickers are the three players you wouldn't want to leave, and I think having already lost one of them it's tough to take, and it'll be a big loss, but hopefully we don't see any more departures. I could see maybe one more though.
Yeah, and just touching on that as well, when you mentioned Hatate and Abada, I feel like these names have been brought up for the past few months. You know, Jota's move was very, very quick to me anyway. Like, it just came out of nowhere and it was done within a week or two. Whereas Hatate and Abada, as I say, it's been a few months. These have been rumbling of potential moves. Hatate's been speaking about what he would like to do in the future. And so I think it's kind of... it set us up for a bit of expectation or potential of what could be happening. But as Josh said, I would like to think that that's not going to be the case, considering the amount of money that we have been able to bring in for one, that could bring in 2 or 3 solid players to strengthen the squad. The only problem I have is if the names that have come in or the names that are bandied about, it seems very much top heavy at the moment. It all seems to be forward thinkers, and I feel that the focus needs to be closer to the back, especially going into the Champions League.
I would agree. And see, when like Hyung Jun came out quite quickly in in this transfer window, and as soon as I seen that myself, and especially when we continued it, even when Rodgers was appointed, you think, why are we signing another wide forward when we've got like 12 of them? Like, you know, who are we expecting to go? Obviously, we've seen Jota now leave. Abada, I mentioned on this kind of beginning of the segment, but well caught from you guys, of course. So maybe Abada does follow out, and then we've still got some decent numbers, and then that Hyung Jun comes in and maybe gets, you know, 2 out, 1 in kind of situation, makes it a wee bit leaner. But, you know, you're spot on there, because it is all quite top heavy. We do accept that Carter Vickers is a rock nailed on in the defence. Everyone is immensely confident in the abilities of Alistair Johnson, probably to test him in the Champions League and domestically this year. It does seem, you know, there's some rumours and some murmurs around left back. You know, is there Tierney coming in? Is there somebody else or whatever? It's hard to know what's going on there. But our centre-back position, it's hard to imagine that Rodgers doesn't look at another defender to come in, because even if you do fancy Starfelt and Vickers, you need another man in there to be pushing them and keeping them on their toes. And then you've got the cover, of course, in case that's something, you know, goes against you like we had last season. It felt like every centre-back was out for 3 months at one stage, you know, collectively over the season. That makes sense. The Rio Hatate comments that Sean's talking about as well really caught attention. I think this was on Tuesday or Wednesday this week, but he said to DAZN, maybe the Premier League, this is in response to what level he could see his career going to or something like that. Maybe the Premier League, it's once in a lifetime stage. If I can play there, I'd like to take the challenge in the future. Right now, the top priority is to do what I need to do for Celtic. That's my team at the moment before playing in a Champions League. It was a stage I longed for, and I want to compete there again. I think it was a really good experience. Now, I remember being at Celtic Park for the opening game against Real Madrid, and I said in the aftermath of it, and I've brought it up a few times, but Hatate on the same pitch as Modric that night, he was just getting schooled by the master on that night, and we've seen a lot of his ascent. Like, it's in that it's in that kind of role, that kind of mould in the squad of what he does in midfield and progressing the ball, etc. And I didn't fear, before the Saudi thing happened, I didn't fear Jota or Rio really going for 20 plus million, because I didn't think in Europe or in Champions League they'd really done enough where a team is going to knock down Celtic's door and say, aye, we will pay 25 for him, because they'll need a wee bit more proof in the pudding from these guys, in my opinion, because the Champions League campaign last year definitely wasn't, if you were outside of Celtic looking at it, you wouldn't look at the players and be convinced by it, is my point, So it's great to hear that is maybe, probably, how Hatate is thinking about it, and this Champions League group stage is firmly on like the priority list of a lot of the squad, it would feel like, So that's what I take from comments like that. I know some people kind of read the Premier League part of it and think, oh, well, he's maybe wishing himself away or something like that. But I think of it more as, no, he's firmly committed on the improvement he makes as a player at Celtic in the Champions League.
I was just going to say, he's still a young guy as well. He's still got plenty of time in that sense as well to get that move. And just like what you're touching on, if he was to get a good Champions League campaign under his belt, then he's going to be very much sought after. You can tick off the Champions League, which was obviously the case when he came over from Japan. That was his main goal and objective at that moment. And it sounds like absolutely he's got ambitions to get to the Premier League as well. But a good Champions League campaign certainly won't do him any harm.
Yeah, I think obviously the Premier League part of the comments, I think that's going to be the case with every single player when they're asked where they want to end up these days. The Premier League, it might turn into Saudi Arabia at one point, we don't know, but at the moment it's going to be every player wants to play in the Premier League. But at this stage, at this moment in time, Hatate is focusing clearly on the Champions League and the upcoming season at Celtic, and that's going to be what's on his mind. And like you said, Quinny, potentially it's a thing within the squad where they want to improve upon that Champions League of last campaign. Obviously missed chances were the absolute key of that campaign. We were missing chances left, right and centre, which if we could have taken, we could have gone further in Europe, but the squad will be looking to improve on that this season. I think that's at the forefront of Rio Hatate's mind at the minute. I think the Premier League comments are just what his overall ambitions are in his career. I think every player's going to have those.
Yeah. It would definitely be way more suspect if he said, maybe Saudi Arabia. We would all be losing our mind if he said that, Oh, no, it's happening.
I know. We'd be worrying about the next video at that moment.
Exactly.
His card wasn't on the table, which was nice. They had Albion a jetty, but which somebody noticed, which is fantastic. And but yeah, thankfully his card wasn't on the deck on that one. But yeah, that's the way I would hope the squad, because that's the thing, but that's what we are trying to embrace, I think, more as a club, is we're a Champions League club. You come here to get that experience. You're not going to come here and get the same experience you get in these other countries that offer these different things for different, career development, depending on who you're talking to, player-wise and situation. Because Champions League, for somebody like Hatate and even Jota, who we've just sold, and all the guys we've still got in the squad, Matt O'Reilly, whose comments we could probably mention as well in this tone. But for them, that Champions League move, like you said, Sean, like if you got a good Champions League campaign, think about, you guys will remember, maybe it wasn't the last Champions League, but the one before, Salzburg get out their group. They had a group of death, and their main guy was Karim Adeyemi, wee German youth guy they'd picked up, similar maybe to Jota in some respects in terms of what he does and who he was, kind of idea. And then I don't know how many goals he scored. It was maybe like 3 or 4, but which is fine. That's a good amount of goals to score in the Champions League group stages. And he goes from Salzburg to Dortmund off the back of that. Now, Salzburg have also sold lots of good players to lots of good teams in the past, so there's a wee bit of that path has been trodden. But the point remains, if Hatate gets 3 goals in the group stages, like what sort of teams around Europe then look at a midfielder that does what he does, and then at Champions League level can continue that? It opens up. It's not just then Brightons and Brentfords that are looking at him and whatever, and Al Ittihad's. It's then like Juventus's and whoever else is. Just saying Juve because I don't know why they're not a great team right now, but you get where I'm getting with that. It just proves it puts you on a different pedestal. I
think it's definitely a model that should be that should be the ambitions of the club. I mean, Celtic has already got the name within European and world football, but it is trying to compete in the Champions League. And there you're mentioning like Salzburg and Ajax as well. Ajax don't compete in the best of leagues. Like you can usually narrow it down to the teams that are most likely going to win, but they've got the model of bringing in young, develop, sell on, and that's been our motto for decades. And if we are following suit into that, the likes of going back to Kieran Tierney, who was at 20 odd million as well, Jota coming in, buy low, sell high. If you're able to do that and compete in the Champions League as well, you're setting yourself up for a great future, I think.
Yeah, I think I would agree with Sean. That's completely what the club should be aiming for, just to become that type of team where it offers a player the chance to come in. You're going to win trophies domestically, but you're also going to get that opportunity to play in the biggest stage in club European football, where if you know that if you do well, you're going to get the opportunities to move on to these big clubs. So yeah, definitely. Obviously, Salzburg are not quite like us. They don't really have the reputation in Europe that we do. But if we manage to even get maybe about just get similar to their level of developing talent, then our name as Celtic Football Club can make up for the rest, because everyone knows who Celtic are in European football. So definitely that should be a model the club are trying to get towards and aiming for.
Yeah. And I think, the reappointment of Brendan Rodgers further compounds that kind of move that we're trying to make. When you listen to his comments, obviously, when he was appointed, he was talking about quality. He was talking about previously the transfer business being confused, and, it was very clear, and things are going to be very different and much more organised this time around. And, right off the bat, we've got that top. The thing I loved about Rodgers first time, and the thing that I'm very much looking forward to seeing second time around, is he does bring, and you've probably seen the pictures of him with the training gear at the pitch, but he does bring like a football department with him, like a Premier League football department come with him, and that level of, reputation that he has, and then just that actual, coaching nous and all the rest of it is going to be a big part of maybe what makes this next Champions League campaigns, and the generation that we're now kind of turning into, this Celtic generation that's kind of going on at the moment, will be kind of led by. And we've had the comments, I mentioned them a moment ago, everyone's probably seen them, from Matt O'Reilly at the training pitch, talking about how Ange was like not coming and sitting with them at lunch, basically, not talking to them. But Rodgers is down to clown, and he's hanging out with them at lunchtime, asking them what they're playing on Xbox and whatever, and getting to know them a bit more, let's say, so a bit different at Lennoxtown already.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting. I would compare it potentially to, obviously I'm just out of school, but I'd compare it to the way teachers teach in school. So obviously you've got Ange Postecoglou, who's the more strict teacher, who won't kind of talk to you about what life is like outside the school. He's just interested in your grades and things like that. Whereas Brendan Rodgers is more the down with the kids, as we could say it, type of school teacher, where he's like, oh, what are you up to at the weekend, stuff like that. And I think, me as a person, I prefer teachers like that, and players probably prefer managers like that, who can kind of know what they're doing, know about them and stuff like that. So it can, but then you have the kind of devil's advocate of that, where some players will prefer different managerial styles, and different managers obviously have their own managerial styles. I think Ange's comes from the fact he had to tell his best friend to retire because he wasn't good enough when he initially went into management, and he said, I'm never building up relationships with players because of that. Obviously, Brendan Rodgers is of a different opinion, and what works for some doesn't work for others. Ange's management style has been successful. It's got him where he has. So is Brendan Rodgers. But maybe Matt O'Reilly just prefers Rodgers' style of management, and other players in the squad might not. So I think it's just a matter of opinion at the end of the day. But it is interesting to hear that maybe Ange wasn't something so simple as sitting with him at lunch, just locked away in his office. So I feel like that's quite interesting comments, though. But at the end of the day, it's a matter of opinion.
I think one of the key words there was reluctance, was the word that he used, which definitely gives off the standoff. Like, were players comfortable and even feeling that they could approach the man with anything? But even when you look back at that, and you would think as if, my God, that team are playing for him. They were playing for Ange. But from the outside, that's the way it looked. Like they were pressing. It was the whole, we never stop. You felt like there was a whole, I'm the leader and this is our team and we're all in this together. And then when you're hearing comments like that, you're wondering what was the actual dynamic behind the doors that we didn't get to see. And with Brendan Rodgers coming in, who is very much the nurturing and the quiet spoken and, come on, son, I'll put the armour in you, we can do this together and all of that. So you wonder with the likes of, because Matt O'Reilly, you think as if that was an Ange signing, but So he was used to the Ange Postecoglou way. Are we going to see even more from him now that there's a personal development that's come in with Brendan Rodgers almost immediately? Because that's only been a couple of weeks. So there's a real shift in momentum by the sounds of it, even coming from the players.
Yeah, it definitely feels like that. And Matt O'Reilly was probably one of the players some people thought might leave this window. And similarly, like Tate's comments, I was hoping that would be in O'Reilly's mind. So I don't think O'Reilly did enough last season to warrant a £15 million transfer or whatever, really, you know. So to hear he is already bought into the new manager and thinking like, yeah, I could, you know, this is better, this is different. I could probably get more out of this coming season than maybe I previously imagined. And, you know, part of the Rodgers factor coming in is some of these guys up and coming want to be under the wing of a guy that's a Premier League level. You know, that's the way he conducts himself. Ange Postecoglou obviously finds himself there now. But like you mentioned, Josh, his career has been built up of his own personal experiences from, you know, like part-time football all the way up, you know, like because Australian football isn't like a fully professional, especially when he's playing and managing, you know, 15, 20 years ago and all the rest of it, all the way up to Japan and obviously all the way through here. So when you go through those different levels, there's lots of different dynamics. Like I got a UEFA B license myself and did some coaching, and like I had a hand at trying kind of both methods of approach. And probably the last team I was at probably tried a wee bit more of that Rodgers than I should have. Maybe got to know guys, got a wee bit close, made some bad decisions off the back of it, you know. So it's one of those ones where everyone, like you say, Josh, everyone is going to be a bit different and everyone is going to take it at their own style. And, you know, especially from the Japanese lads, we did hear, like you say, it did feel from the outside, like, it did feel like a family. Like, you hear Maeda calling him his dad, and you hear about how Kyogo's so attached to him. And, you know, even the other, you know, like everyone, it did feel like it was a all for one and one for all effort, which if he's managed to harness that with keeping, like, not just arm's distance, it feels like, but like social distancing restrictions, that extra length, you know, and he still managed to build that up, then he must be very powerful on the training pitch, you know what I mean? Because he's getting all of that from the training pitch. He's not getting it from the wee chats in the canteen and the wee chats after training, and or maybe the wee chats after training still happen, but he's understand what I'm saying. He's missing a huge social dynamic there, but he still managed to actually get that in the team, perhaps. Maybe we're speculating now, maybe that wasn't quite the case. Maybe they're all fantastic actors as well now. But it definitely does raise some questions, but it does fill me with more confidence as well that Abadas, O'Reilly's, some of these guys, Hatate's, are going to be like, yeah, man, like I'm staying here next season. I'm comfortable. I'm in the team. I know where I'm going. I'm progressing. I'm getting better. And this guy can help me get even better than I was maybe thinking about before. So I kind of mentioned Hyung Jun earlier on. And, you know, I think Rio and O'Reilly feel bought into me off the back of the comments that we've heard from them this week in different ways. Maybe Rio is looking to the January transfer window and O'Reilly's maybe just looking to next summer, perhaps, like in terms of with the manager leaving and they have to, everyone's reassessing their situations. Jota obviously leaves for mega money. They'll all be thinking, what if Saudi Arabia phoned me? You know, surely they've all thought that at this stage. It's only natural, you would think. Yeah. So to hear those comments from those two, we obviously know McGregor is here until he retires, you know. So that's a solid core of a midfield that I think we could run under Brendan Rodgers quite successfully. I know we've always kind of, over the last 2 years, said like, oh, we need a destroyer, we need a ball winner in midfield. And I would still say that's the case. But you know, starting this season off with Rio, O'Reilly and McGregor seemingly all bought in and ready to go. That's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah, I think for quite, obviously, like throughout the past, I'd say decade, Celtic have always seemed to have a strong midfield. Last season, we obviously had Aaron Moy, who was able to come in, dip his toe in the water and do well for a couple of months it was, and then he's obviously hung up his boots. You had the likes of Tom Rogic in prior years. So we always seem to have a core group of players in midfield, and I think O'Reilly last season, he didn't really have that starting spot nailed down at any point. Maybe he did for a couple of weeks running due to form, etc. But now that I think that path is clear for him in one of those advanced state roles to go in and really cement his place there. He's 22 years old now. He signed when he was only 20. So I think he can really kick on, like you were saying, Sean, under that new style of management that could suit him down to the ground. Obviously, Hatate, we know what you can do, we know what McGregor can do. So we do have a really strong core in midfield. I would just be potentially slightly worried about the backup, but then again, we did just sign Odin Thiago home. You've got the likes of David Turnbull there. Obviously, he does only have 1 year left in his deal. I think we might go on to discuss that soon, but yeah, it's a very strong core in midfield, but I think we could do with maybe another one or two bodies in there.
And I think it's the type of player as well that you're mentioning. If you've got that strong unit with the defensive, we don't really have that. We were used to seeing Scott Brown being the one, like with the game in front of him. You know, he was the man, the voice, the everything. It was in that midfield, the director as such. And I don't feel, although Callum McGregor has dropped back, I feel like he's still kind of itching to burst forward at times as well. But a holding midfielder, especially Champions League, is key this season. To me, I think that it's just we really need to push on, even if it did mean progressing into the Europa League. Great, I would take a Europa League run if you were to hand me it just now, but like that's where our aims and objectives should be, and it's trying to get the personnel to fit that as well, you know. But we'll see what happens in that sense. And just when you're touching about Turnbull, I feel that it's been a total waste of the whole transfer since Motherwell. I feel like he's not been given the opportunity that he should have, because to me, every time he comes on, he gives you that something. There's always you're just waiting on that turn of magic to come from him. He's got a shot in him. We know Brendan Rodgers likes to play with a kind of shoot on sight. We've seen that with Roderick, Armstrong, Beaton at times as well. We can't forget his rocket into the top bin. So we know that style of play suits Rodgers. So I'm wondering if Turnbull will maybe get an opportunity in that.
I can see Turnbull getting a shout under Rodgers, no problem at all. With him having 1 year left on his contract as well, he's in a very tricky position because he's probably had a decent enough, let's say, showreel over the last 2 seasons, and he could probably, with his agent, talking to any prospective clubs, argue, I've been doing pretty damn well here and not been getting a sniff, you know, because he has done, you know, we're talking about Abada, goals and assists per minute. You know, Turnbull's not that far behind him in some regard, you know, he's had good patches himself, and like you say, he's very direct, which is very Rodgers as well, you know. So I could easily see Turnbull coming in and pushing O'Reilly in that same kind of spot, you know, with Moy leaving, it feels like maybe. But again, like one of the things Rodgers did say is it's all about quality additions. You know, we've seen Thiago Holm come in already, and it does feel like he is, you know, maybe probably should be better than some of the other guys we've had in that squad position to push the midfield already. Guys like Degucci and Abelgard and maybe one or two others, Soros and whatever's, which is fine. But when you do look at the quality we have in midfield, if we are going to get someone better than that, we've been linked to Fabian Rieder relentlessly, but it's kind of cooled off over the last day or two. But it would, if we are going to get a midfielder of any description, a ball winner, Scott Brown replacement, or someone with a bit more magic or anything in between, they need to be top caliber coming in now, don't they?
Yeah,
absolutely. It needs to be a starting 11. Sorry, Josh, I keep interrupting.
Oh, no.
I feel like it absolutely needs to be a starting 11 signing if anybody's to come in. You know, like I keep going back to Champions League. Like I feel like we can't be going as if just in case somebody loses form or an injury, we've got somebody to kind of step in. And I feel like that's not just the case for midfield, but even at defence as well. We kind of seen that when Johnson get injured at right back. Ralston came in, and did he really? He had a couple of decent games, but was he the caliber that we need when somebody of such importance? Because Johnson certainly established that for the very first game. Like, he was irreplaceable because we didn't have anybody to replace him, essentially, you know. And I feel like that's the sort of thing we need to be cautious here. Are we just signing for the sake of it? As you touched, like we need players that reach the starting 11 almost immediately if you're going to be making those important signings.
Yeah, I would agree with that, definitely. I think if you're looking for a holding midfielder type, say a defensive kind of ball winner, like we've said, you don't want someone who's just going to be sitting on the bench in the domestic games and then just comes in for the European games, because that's just no use. You want someone who's able to contribute all the time in every single game. And I think the club should be looking to add potentially not only starting quality players, because you've obviously got the likes of Home, you've got your likes of Talios, but you do want, obviously you've got your 11 core of starters. You also want a couple of maybe 3 or 4 others, 5 others who are also as good as the players who are starting week in, week out. So that should definitely be something Celtic are looking to do. Maybe bringing in a body in the midfield who's, along with those 3 that are there, is able to come in and replace one or two of them each week. So yeah, I would completely agree. We need quality additions as well as potentially the ones that we're looking at bringing in young and then selling on.
Yeah. Because I think like the Reader's definitely got the right kind of profile of what we normally go for anyway, and then what you would think and hope Rodgers would be after. And one of the things I was speaking about this recently, I forget where, but like Rodgers' first time around, like in two, I remember, and I don't know if I'm remembering this wrong or whatever. So if you guys know or anyone listening to this, feel free to drop in the comments and get me up to speed. But I'm quite sure the first time Rodgers came in, he made some sort of glowing comment around James Forrest when he was Liverpool manager, and he said something to the tune of like, you know, like he was talking about familiarity with the squad and knowing some players and whatever. And it might have even been into the tune of like he knew a bit about Forrest's game before he came to the squad or whatever. Anyway, point becomes, I think that is a fantastic, whether I've remembered that right or not, or whatever, but like if you're a Premier League manager, you've got all those facilities to analyse, you know, players' potential, scouting, should we be signing them and whatever. You obviously do strength and weakness analysis and all the rest of it. And there's no way that he doesn't come into this current squad with a little bit of that intel, because when he was Leicester manager, even if it was just the papers aside, the scouts would have still been looking at players, you know, but he was linked to a fair few Celtic players as Leicester manager, you know. So I'm going to be, I think guys like Rio, guys like O'Reilly are going to show a lot of the quality that I can already hear some comment sections, people going, oh, they weren't good enough last year and they weren't consistent enough and all the rest of it. And I don't think that can be undersold for how hard it is to get quality that goes on top of that or pushes them out the team, you know. And we do need to keep that kind of standard at the club pretty high, because we definitely don't want to slip back into that position of just getting guys because we can and all the rest of it. But there's also, and this is something I'm going to contradict myself with, and I want to get your opinion on, guys, but see when we reference these other clubs we've mentioned already, Ajaxes and Salzburgs and Benficas and whoever's, right, what you tend to see from a lot of those guys is, rightly or wrongly, your opinions on it or can be whatever, right, but they do hold a significant bunch of like youth players that they professionally loan out and get minutes across the Dutch league, the Dutch second league, and a few other bits and pieces, depending on how good the guy is and all the rest of it. And over the last 2 seasons, you know, the sort of guys, if this was in one of these are situations, but see guys like Max Johnson, Josh Doig, Lewis Ferguson, you know, what you want to say about Lewis Ferguson to one side, but emerging young talent in this league, like by these other clubs, generally what happens is they'll definitely take a few of them up. Maybe they don't play them and then they loan them out elsewhere. But anyway, what becomes that is positive transfer fees then start to roll into the club off the back of guys that are not even losing out the squad. So as much as there definitely has to be that increased focus on quality coming in, we should still also be looking, you know, I know the reason I've got to this, sorry, I know I kind of feel like I'm in a million places at the one time here, but I got to this, I was thinking about also the Turnbull thing not really working out. And I think it has been a wasted opportunity, because if he wasn't going to get the minutes and all the rest of it, if we had maybe gave him a loan out somewhere and he was banging in some form, we could be selling that guy for $6 million to Sheffield Wednesday or something like that, or $8 million this summer. And that's just more money that would go into the pot to maybe go and get some of that better quality. So I'm kind of saying we need to do everything and nothing all at the same time. But just as we're talking about this is all the stuff that's running through my mind. Sorry.
Yeah, it's kind of about like, obviously your main source of probably income in terms of the transfer market is selling our big players on, your Jotas, your Moussa Dembele's, your Kieran Tierney's, players like that. But also, like you're saying, Quinny, you've got guys like potentially David Turnbull, Frimpong, yeah. Yeah,
Frimpong
exactly.
was a good flip around. Also, I wasn't alone or whatever, you know. But and we've missed out on some. By the way, we should see. And again, Moritz Jens is a clanger and a half we've dropped. You know, see, instead of cancelling that loan, we should have just bought him and loaned him out. You know, you know, that's what any club with a bit of money in the bank, which we apparently do. Obviously, we clearly do now because we've been selling stuff and we're in the Champions League group stage and all the rest of it. But that's what a boss, you know, that's what clubs of our standard structure should do. Activate that for £1 million or £3 million, whatever it was, loan him out there. And then I don't know what Wolfsburg paid for him, but it was like £8 million or something.
Yeah, it was a decent fee, like, and I think obviously I don't think we let go of Jens early because Ange obviously didn't see him in the plans, or Ange didn't rate him. So maybe that's a missed opportunity for those at the hierarchy of the club who are like, oh, we can actually buy this guy for like 1 or 2 million. Why not just buy him for that? And we know there's going to be clubs interested in him, so just sell him immediately. Then it doesn't matter for Ange; it's absolutely fine. So a good chance to make money there, potentially missed, but. like you say, going back to the David Turnbull situation, just completely changing the topic there. I think the 1 year left in his deal. I think if he's going to contribute under Brendan Rodgers, I think the club need to tie him down to a new deal if he's going to, because you don't want him to do well this season and start to do well under Rodgers. Then when January the 1st comes, there's a whole host of clubs that could be interested in taking him and a Bosman. So I think if Brendan Rodgers will need to make his decision before December and see, are we going to give him a new deal? Are we going to do what with him? Because you could potentially end up with another Ryan Christie situation where he just goes for £1 million or something like that. So you definitely want to get that situation sorted, in my opinion, whether you're going to keep him, get him a new contract and he's going to be a member of the squad, or whether you're going to sell him this window.
Just when you're touching on contracts, we just need to look at what happened last season at the other side of the city, the total mess that they had left themselves in with their key players, not just a David Turnbull who wasn't getting a start, but this was the players that they had built their team around. But besides the point, when we're talking about the likes of Lewis Ferguson, you can mention Aaron Hickey, all of these sorts of players. It used to be the case that Celtic or Rangers would retain the talent within Scottish football. They would cherry pick the best players from Hearts, Hibs, Aberdeen, whatever. But Scottish football isn't even doing that anymore. Like, we're seeing these players move to Italy and move elsewhere. Even youth players from Celtic going over to Germany and trying their luck there. So that I feel like there's a lot of holes in Scottish football, but that's a completely different subject that's not necessarily for here and for now. But yeah, and touching on the Turnbull situation, absolutely need to tie him down if he's going to get any opportunities this season.
Yeah, so we've been in this situation one too many times, eh? It does feel like the guys in the last year of the contract, I call it Chris Commons syndrome, but you've got 6 months to go on your contract, you'll score from anywhere on the pitch and you'll do it all, and then as soon as that deal's signed, feet up, big man,
And
I love Chris Commons, by the way, but yeah.
When I was talking about the transfers just being top heavy, I do feel like I would even be looking at another goalkeeper as well, potentially. Because I feel like Joe Hart gives me the absolute fear when he's got the ball at his feet. The absolute fear. I rate him as a shot stopper still, but in terms of trying to pass it out, I just worry every time he gets it. I'm like, what is he going to do? How much is he going to delay the kick because he holds on to it for far too long? So yeah, potentially another goalkeeper and defender for me.
Yeah, I think it's kind of unknown still a little bit for me in defence. Like, what do we need? What does he want? Still, because I think we're quite clear on the right back stuff. I think Ralston's maybe just lost the ghost of it a little bit. Because it felt like when Juranovic was here, there was an argument. Who's the best right back? There was a discussion to be had, for some people. But now it's not even at all. And it feels like maybe Ralston's a wee bit like, what the fuck do I need to do, man? Like, come on.
Yeah.
So it's maybe, I kind of felt bad for him towards the end of the season. And maybe under Rodgers we'll get a kind of new lease of life. But yeah, so it's kind of hard to gauge. Is Ralston all the way in? Is he maybe on the way out? Is he maybe just going to grin and bear it and stay and be a reluctant backup? It's a hard one to work out. So for backup right back, for left back, I've got really no idea where we stand. Goalkeeper, as you say, if we've got mad money, we need to go and get a proper goalkeeper where we can.
Yeah, not a Barkas. Don't be spending that kind of mad money.
Well, he's just moved to Turkey, and it wasn't one of the big teams, but one other thing I was going to say as well, like Welsh's future obviously is a wee bit up in the air, and there is just a few weeks. Like, the defence is quite shallow. We still need to see. Another thing I was going to say as well. Obviously, we don't suspect at this stage that Kobayashi done enough last year for us to really think about him making an impression under Rodgers, but stranger things have happened. But speaking of stranger things have happened, I don't know who he's training with in pre-season, but technically Liam Scales is back as being a Celtic player. Like, the loan at Aberdeen has expired. And it was just, we're talking about Dublin and Ireland there, it kind of creeped into the back of my mind. Wouldn't it be funny to see Liam Scales at left back or something?
Jesus, man.
I know. But even the likes of the centre-back situation, when you've not got Carter Vickers or Starfield, who do you rely on? Is it Kobayashi, who didn't really put himself in good light, I don't think, particularly from Hearts at Tynecastle? where he looked so uncomfortable, so unsure of himself or what he was actually meant to be doing. So yeah, I 100% feel that we need to get another centre back in there as well.
It does feel as like just to come back on to a guy that probably is coming in. We mentioned him already, Hyung Jun. He came out with some mad comments this week as well, saying he would forfeit his salary. He would do anything to make this deal happen. I caught some reports that Guangzhou have made a move to sign some sort of Brazilian striker from like a crap team in Brazil. Yeah. So that feels like the replacement is lined up and he could become an imminent. Now, we kind of spoke on the wide forward positions earlier. I don't think this guy comes into. We've got Marco Tilio obviously now in the squad as well. We've already referenced Forrest, and we know the squad as it stands besides. But does Hyung Jun, does that maybe lean us towards Abada leaves, or is Hyung Jun just coming in to kind of, pardon the expression in this case, but make up the numbers, fill in the squad that Jota's left?
I think it potentially does indicate a departure, because if obviously you're bringing in Hyung Jun, you look at the options you've got on the right. You've got James Forrest, you've got Abada, then you'll have Hyung Jun. Then on the left, you've got like Sadaizen Maeda and Sead Haksabanovic. So I think potentially it does mean we're going to lose one. And a lot of people are saying potentially he's Jota 2.0. I would disagree with that. I don't think he's the Jota replacement. Maybe comments will come back to bite me and people will be screen recording this and showing it to me in a couple of months' time. But I don't think he'll be the Jota replacement. I think if we're trying to replace Jota, we should be signing a marquee player. That's just my opinion. But yeah, I think he'll be a decent addition, though. You don't win South Korean K-League Player of the Year for 2022 if you're rotten. So I've the couple of highlights reels of him, looks all right. I feel like anyone can look good in the highlights reel. So I think, yeah, he's certainly a good talent. And I think he could be a decent addition for us. Obviously, similar. I think he's in the similar bracket to Tilio, where he's a good talent in his country and he's coming here to see if he can develop. I don't know if he's a Rodgers signing. It's more one of the ones probably like some Mark Wall have identified, but we'll see what happens. Decent addition it should be.
I agree in the sense that I don't think it's a Rodgers signing either, and I do worry that there when you're touching of maybe a player leaving, I hope that isn't the case, because I don't, and again could very well be proven wrong here. I don't think it's going to be for starting 11 as such. But we can only wait and see. I know if that was one of our players that was kicking up the fuss that he absolutely is, I wouldn't be taking to it too well. I mean, it shows that we are highly thought of and can obviously offer something to him that he sees. But if the shoe was in the other foot, I wouldn't be feeling good about it.
No, agreed. And I think see the kind of sentiment I get out of that in terms of his desire, his desperation to come, is part of the thing that made me think the initial Hatate Saudi Arabia rumours wouldn't maybe they still will, but like for these guys, getting to Europe is the big thing. It's not really about money's important. Money's a part of it, of course it is, but it's more let's get to Europe. Not many of them make it to Europe, from these far-flung reaches of the world, North America, East Asia, and even South America. It feels like there's a lot of South Americans in football, right? But there's a lot more of them in South America than outside, So it's one of those ones where I think it's just the ultimate desire to get here. And if he does show that desire to get here, we probably do hope he becomes a bit more of a Kyogo, who's signed on now until 2027. Long reign the king, or long live the king, is I kind of see the wee man now. We had the Larson comparisons come out at the back end of last season, and it was perfectly timed, very well executed. Lovely to see. He's come on a day or two after Jota signs. He's signed on, and he's talking about how he wants to enjoy being a Celtic player for as long as possible, and he's really happy to be here. And him cementing himself in as that pillar, as a centre forward, as the main focal point of attack, is brilliant for bringing other players into, because they know, I'll be playing with him. He's the main guy up front. Whereas last season, that was maybe for a couple of seasons, that's not been the case. Is Dembele leaving? Is he staying? Are we going to sign Edouard? We're going to keep him, or are we going to sell him now? There's always been these moving parts. But having somebody like Kyogo now in 4-year contract, you've got to think 2 or 3 of them are safe as houses without speculation of leaving. But that's that's probably the best bit of business you can do in the summer, isn't it?
I think that's tremendous business from the club to get. I think he's been our key player for the past 2 seasons. He rattles in goals week in, week out, and That's one thing you're going to be guaranteed now for the next 4 years if he even stays on further than that is goals. 5 goals in 3 cup finals. You can't argue with the contribution he brings to the team. He's been absolutely immense. We never thought he would be this good when he actually joined the club, but we've seen what he can do. And obviously the timing of it, like you said, Quinny, was absolutely perfect. Jota was announced at 9:30 in the Monday night. This news comes out at 10 in the morning on the Tuesday. So very well executed from the club, like you say. And obviously to have him, he's going to be our main man for the next coming years. He's obviously 28 now. He's potentially getting on a bit in a couple of years, but to have him guaranteed as your starting striker is absolutely tremendous business from the club. Obviously, Rodgers admires him. I wouldn't know a manager who wouldn't admire him. So, yeah, Rodgers will be delighted with that as well. Obviously, coming into the club, there's no uncertainties up front now. He knows where a lot of his goals are going to come from. He can work that around his play style, that he's going to have a top-tier striker in Kyogo. And like you said, Quinny, obviously you're going to have players who are coming to this club and you see him. Kyogo's he's getting well known now. He's starting to play for Japan as well, scored for Japan. So players looking at him, I'm going to be crossing balls into him. That's brilliant. I'll get a lot of assists from that type of thing. So it's tremendous, like I've said. I'm very, very pleased. It was unexpected. There was no reports of it or anything. It was kept under wraps, but the club done really well in announcing it, and obviously brilliant business. And like you said, Quinny, long live the king. But only Kyogo. That's the only king I'm saying is Kyogo. So.
And just when you had mentioned earlier, Josh, about just leaving school, so I'm assuming that there's a substantial age gap here. But I remember when it was like with Henrik Larsson, and Quinny made the comparison to Henrik. We got Henrik Larsson in his prime, and we are now getting Kyogo in his prime. You know, like Henrik did leave on a free. He served out his contract with complete honour and grace, and I feel like that's very much the case. There's a lot of parallels here, not just the goals and contributions and all that, but we've managed to get a player who is absolutely in his prime. Henrik Larsson came from Feyenoord, wasn't really shooting in all cylinders, had a bit of trouble. We didn't really know Henrik Larsson. Maybe we recognised the dreadlocks for USA 94, but that was probably as far as I had went anyway. But Kyogo, not many people knew who he was coming in. He certainly changed the opinions. And I think when Ange had left for Spurs, I think everybody went into autopilot thinking the Japanese key players are going with him because they were certainly his signings. You know, so I think it's very much a statement of intent to be able to tie him down for his prime years.
Yeah, it's massive, especially strikers, because scoring goals is the name of football. It's the hardest thing to do in football, and a lot of these guys, we know they get their best form when they've had, like, it's not quite the whole 10,000 hour rule, but it's probably not too far away from it. You know, once they've had seasons of experience, they've been churning out, in Kyogo's case, double-digit goals season after season after season, improving, going up levels, going up stages, becoming a national player, coming to Celtic, playing Champions League, etc. So yeah, very exciting. And like you kind of mentioned, that's why it came into my mind, but we do need another marquee player in the team that's a bit like Kyogo is fantastic, but he's not a magic man. You know, he's not like Jota who can twist and turn and make something out of nothing, if that makes sense. He's much more the finishing component of the machine, you know, of the team, almost. So it does need to be a high caliber guy that comes in for Jota, but that Kyogo, like, lockdown for me, I feel like, or, you know, lock in, we've got him signed on for ages now. I think guys like Daisen Maeda, guys like Abada, especially now that Jota's gone, they'll probably be rubbing their hands together, like you were kind of saying, Sean and Josh, in terms of how they can, like, contribute and feed. But with Jota out the picture, you know, like the first name on the team sheet was Jota Kyogo, which was 2 names, but it was almost 1 because you knew if they were both fit, they're both playing. And then is Jota going to play left or right? And then who's going to play in the free? That was always the question. But now that Jota's gone, the first name on the team sheet is now Kyogo. Yeah. So it's 2 spots up for grabs. So Abada will probably be mad buzzing to come in. We might get new levels out of him. And Daisen Maeda, I think, had a wee bit of a rough time over the course, but equally, I think if he's got a bit more of I'll be playing every week and I'm locked in, we could get new levels out of them. So yeah, maybe some quality reinforcements may be done elsewhere. But I think the Kyogo one, I'm absolutely made up about it. And I think it's going to be a huge season for him personally, because he loves taking the club on his back in that sense. He loves putting the badge on his heart. And, like, you know, when it is big games, finals, like you were talking about, Josh, you know, derbies and Champions League, like, that's when it's you guys are smiling because you feel what I'm feeling right now when I'm thinking about this, but he feels it on the pitch and those big moments and those big games. He's a guy that does turn up, and you can't buy a guy like that in form. Really, they're so hard to get, so expensive. So to have a guy that was brought into prime and then keeping him here for it is buster of a move. I love it.
I think it just tells you where the club is at as well. If he, obviously we can see what he can do, but there's something that's mirroring. He can see what we are looking at and what we're wanting to achieve. So there's obviously a match there for both sides. It's not just we've tied down our key striker. There's certainly a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, I think as well, touching on the Champions League, he's yet to score in the Champions League, I think, so that'll be a big ambition for him next season. Hopefully he can do that and give us a couple of goals to celebrate in Europe as well.
Big time. One thing we won't be celebrating is goals in South Korea. I heard a report this morning that we might be getting the Wolves game on in Ireland or something like that, Dublin or Belfast, I'm not too sure. But the South Korea tour is completely cancelled. It feels like all parties have pulled out from it. And obviously I follow some South Korean stuff for fantasy football and whatever. But the Koreans over there, they're pretty raging about it. Like the community over there, they think they've been hard done to by the Europeans, as it were. So no Korea tour, it's off.
Yeah, it's disappointing for the Celtic fans over there, obviously not getting to see their heroes in the flesh. Obviously, I think Roma and Wolves pulled out, so there's a bit of uncertainty about who Celtic's opponents were going to be. Obviously, we've heard the reports of potentially the Wolves game getting held in Dublin. I think that could be a good idea. Obviously, we've got a big fan base over in Ireland, so that could potentially be something the club look at, and good opportunity for the Irish fans to get to see the team. But yes, it's thrown a bit of a spanner in the works in pre-season. I think a lot of the mainstream media coming out and saying Celtic's pre-season thrown into chaos, etc. I think that's just a bit dramatic. It's typical Scottish mainstream media, but it's a wee shame for those in South Korea. But at the end of the day, we're still heading out to the Far East. We've got our Japan tour, 2 games there. Then we'll come back, hopefully get the Wolves game on in Dublin, then Athletic Club, then we're back in league action. So yeah, it's sort of full steam ahead. It's just a wee bump in the road.
Yeah, pretty much can't argue any of that and just pretty much echo it. There's not really much to be added to it. Like, I'm sure we'll be able to fill the fixture spots that were there without any problems. And if it is a case of going to Dublin, then there's going to be a good turnout in that side as well. So yeah, there's not really much to be added on that case.
Yeah, that'd be a good. It'd be almost like because the Japan tour was, it felt kind of Angified a little bit as well. Like we had the Australia tour. So if we go to Ireland, also with Rodgers, there'll be a wee bit of, we're kind of keeping that sentiment, that kind of party atmosphere on the go for pre-season, which could be good fun as well. So yeah, I would say let's hope we get. Wales are a decent club. We a good fun friendly game for sure. The thing I hate about going to friendly games, the odd couple of times I've done it, is when they're naff. When it's against a pure rubbish team. But I remember going. I don't remember if it was a good game or a good score or anything. But I remember one year I went to Celtic Park to watch us play Parma. This was like donkeys ago. Like I think they had. Was it 97? Yeah, I don't think we've played them more than once. So if it was 97, then that's what it would have been.
97 because we played Roma as well.
Oh, did we?
We played Roma in 97.
But I remember going to a Parma friendly game and thinking, that was bra. Like, that wasn't bad for a friendly, And I've been to some other ones and they've been stinking, obviously. But I think Wolves in Dublin sounds like a party, to be honest with you. So if you're able to go to that, if it happens, I would say have a good time and hail. Well, guys, it's been an absolute pleasure this week. I think we've had a lot to chew over, with it mainly being things like comments. What Rio said, what O'Reilly said, what Kyogo said. They're all signing on, and also Jota's left. But as we've seen with the Jota move, I think things are going to move really, really fast. And by the time we get back here next week for the Flagship podcast, I think there'll maybe be a new signing or two, maybe a departure, who knows. But Josh, absolute pleasure seeing you again as ever, mate. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, great to be back on. Cheers, guys.
And Sean, fantastic debut, mate. Thanks a lot for coming on. Great to have you.
Well, thanks very much for having me. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Any time I get to talk about the hoops, I'm more than happy. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
No, absolute pleasure, mate. And to anyone watching or listening, have a great weekend, and hail.